Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean, the Digital Event Manager of Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. We are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges. And today I'm very excited to welcome you to join Embracing Change, the NFP playbook for rolling out new tech with Jason Potterly. So Jason is the partnerships growth manager of Elmo Software and Brief HR. With over 18 years of experience in technology space, Jason has extensive experience consulting with organizations on how to streamline and automate their HR and payroll processes. During his 9 years at Elmo, he has worked with a wide range of organizations across Australia and New Zealand, giving him an in-depth knowledge of common and diverse HR challenges faced by those NFP sector. Through the Brief HR solutions, he now works with partners to help deliver people, payroll, and planning solutions to their small business clients. He's passionate about helping organizations deliver a seamless employee experience through technology. He also produces and co-hosts the People Pod podcast, designed for anyone wanting to make a workplace truly people-centric. Before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted. If you have any technical issues, I'll be here to assist you. Please just type into the questions box. And also, I'll assure you there will be a lot of questions from you. And you can please also type into the same place, the questions box, and Jason will get them answered by the end. And please note that your comments and questions will not be up here to the entire group. And now the webinar is being recorded. The recording link and the slides will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. And finally, I would like to remind you there's a very short survey at the end. Please help us to complete that. All right, now I'll pass on to Jason for today's section. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean, and thanks everyone for joining us today and taking some time out of your busy schedules to run through this webinar. Today's topic is one that many of you are going to be very familiar with, I'm sure. All organizations have navigated disruption and change over the past few years, change to operating models, products, services, talent, culture, technology, and everything else. And for most of us, dealing with change has meant adopting to new workplace technologies, most commonly things like video conferencing, instant messaging tools to help us stay connected with our peers. And on a much bigger scale, it might be the rollout of brand new technology, finance systems, HR systems, customer records, compliance and audit systems are really critical as well. And they all required a really measured approach to how we launch them effectively. However, like any change initiative, the introduction of new technology into a business can be challenging. So today we're going to talk about how to achieve successful change outcomes when it comes to technology rollouts and the importance of really engaging with your employees and your volunteers to ensure that you've got engagement and buy-in and to ensure the success of the rollout overall. So let's jump straight into it. And really, since 2020, our reliance on technology has become much greater in the workplace. Technology like cloud-based software, instant messaging, video conferencing, data storage has been our saving grace over the past few years. And it's delivered results and cemented its worth more than ever before. It's not that technology was newly discovered or a brand new thing come 2020, but remote working being forced upon organizations has really driven us to adopt this technology much quicker than we probably would have liked to if we were going to roll it out in another scenario. Let's have a look at some of the statistics firstly around technology adoption. There was an IBM report which is based on several surveys of business executives across 20 countries across the world and found in response to COVID-19, around 59% of organizations accelerated their digital transformation and 66% completed initiatives that had previously encountered resistance. So it really lit a fire under our digital transformation projects. As you can see on the screen, the same IBM report revealed that 64% of organizations surveyed shifted to a more cloud-based business activities. 60% accelerated process automation or adjusted their approach to change management, and over half, 55%, made permanent changes to organizational strategy. Another study by McKinsey and Company, where business leaders were asked what their organization was changing or considering changing in response to COVID-19, they found that over 3/4 or 76% were actually changing the use of technologies and systems. So there's definitely been a greater interest in the past few years, or at least a greater urgency in adopting technologies that can help us to navigate the challenges of the pandemic and these challenges created to the workforce itself. And this was illustrated in Elmo's 2021 HR Industry Benchmark Report. That's a report that we pull together every year that's based on a survey of around 1,800 HR professionals across Australia and New Zealand. Now, that reporting indicated there was an uptick since 2019 in various types of HR technology being implemented. The technologies were in the process of being implemented at the time of the survey, or less than 12 months away from being implemented, included things like wellness programs, learning management, workforce planning, onboarding, and communication and collaboration tools, which is no real surprise. The benefits of implementing any technology can be a huge help to unlock great improvements in terms of operational performance and productivity, as well as employee engagement and working with the employees to actually get the most out of their day-to-day. And importantly, technology is really helping to shift organizations to better manage change itself by streamlining a lot of key operations within the business. However, we know that adopting new technologies and implementing new systems is not a walk in the park. Implementing technology is a change program that requires a serious amount of planning and strategy, and there is a key problem. According to McKinsey and Company, Gartner, IBM, there's tons of surveys out there that the number is fairly consistent. 70% of all change initiatives fail. Now that's a terrifying number. And that's not just relating to technology, but any change initiative in general, and that's a fairly high percentage. That's staggering. Jean, I'll ask you to pop in the poll question up now, because I'd like to hear from those in the audience following along. Have you been involved in a failed change initiative in the workplace? Now, I'm not asking if you've failed to initiate change in the workplace. I would not do that. But just being involved in one. My guess is that we will get close to everyone has experienced it. It's something that whether you were involved in the planning in some way or a passenger in that, let us know in the poll and we can have a look at how how everyone's engaged in that.
No worries. So, all right, now we got 100% voted. Let me share the result.
Good. That's what I was kind of banking on 100%, because it's something that I think if you haven't experienced it, you're one of the lucky ones. We might have one person who's lucky enough to not experience it. But yeah, it's something that we're all fairly familiar with, and it's easy to assume that it's because of a lack of budget, resources, or other reasons that are behind it. But research from McKinsey and Gartner point the finger elsewhere. They argue that in most cases the fault lies in one or a combination of the factors that you'll see up on screen now. So a big reason why change initiatives aren't successful is to do with behavior that doesn't support the intended transformation. Resistance, skepticism, a lack of buy-in from employees and managers is really the clincher that seals the ill fate of a change program. And we're going to talk a little later today about how to encourage a positive behavior around change. Another factor that can inhibit success is of a transformation is a top-down approach. Although Gartner research states 80% of organizations manage change from a top-down perspective, and strategic decision-making is generally reserved for senior leadership. The Gartner found that organizations that use an open source approach to change experienced a better success rate, which can be identified as the use of inclusive practices, allowing employees to get engaged, to help plan and implement initiatives, and communication channels remaining open. They found that open source approaches increased organizations' probability of change success by as much as 24%. So it's really worth, and I often, having been in a number of roles within the current organisation within Elmo, there's a number of opportunities to really engage and allow employees to feel part of the process without necessarily, throwing it out to the masses, and still having a directive come from top down, but certainly deliver that. And again, we'll talk to that a little more today. Also in 2020, Gartner reported the amount of change the average employee could absorb before suffering fatigue was cut in half compared to pre-COVID. So being able to embrace and take on as much change as possible, we are often more fatigued now than we have been in the past, and this makes sense. Asking employees to get on board with change is always hard enough on its own, but with other changes happening in the world these days, insurmountable changes to their personal lives, it's easy to understand that they'd be less receptive to change at work. So to successfully roll out workplace change, whether that's introduction of new tech, new processes, new policies, team restructures, or more significant changes such as a merger or an acquisition, we've got to assess the impact of the change on employees. If the risk is not assessed, it may lead to a heightened case of anxiety, stress, and depression. It may not be the actual change that's causing all of this, but it might just be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. And unmanageable workloads, this is something that I see all of the time, when change programs are failing because the amount of work involved in implementing the change isn't recognized. There's rarely a dedicated change resource put in place for major projects. So that's something that needs to be considered, and understand how the change is going to impact not only those who are actioning the change, but the outcomes itself to everyone across the board. Failures are common. 30% of change initiatives rolled out are successful. And again, that's a fairly low number, but failed change programs come with a really huge price tag. Things like the cost to employee morale, fatigue, and trust being broken. It also costs time and money, especially if a transformation project has to be extended or worse, restarted or reinitiated. So the big question is, how do you implement an organizational change successfully? The challenges are twofold: managing the implementation of different improvements initiatives and keeping the organization's energy levels as high as possible during the process that can take often a number of years. So hopefully after we go through today's webinar and you'll have a few tips and tricks to take away. I can't guarantee that we'll shift you into that 30 bucket, but I think if you take on board a lot of these tips and tricks, it could certainly push you a long way down the way to a better change process. So say your organization has decided to implement a new technology, whether that's a communication tool, maybe it's a HR solution like Elmo or Breathe, for example, and we want to think of what are the things we want to consider here. So first thing to consider is the business impact. How is this project going to affect your business? How will it affect the various stakeholders involved in the project itself and the staff themselves? Consider what degree of disruption will occur to staff. Will it disrupt day-to-day tasks, or is it something that's going to happen as one big project on a shorter term basis? Whether you choose to implement something internally or get someone outsourced to come in will change the impacts to individuals day to day. And cultural changes. Is it something that's new technologies? Is a culture a change in the culture rather, in how we engage with our day-to-day. It's critical to understand that those changes are going to implement change to the day-to-day, to the individual. So how does that impact them, and how can you influence the culture in a positive way around that change? It's always, important to be realistic though. In order to implement something successfully, it's going to require a dedicated resource. I see this all the time with implementing all kinds of activities, but from an HR technology perspective, looking at we want to roll out the new technology, but there's often overlooked the impact that has on everyone's day to day. You have to remember that at the end of the day, people still need to complete their main primary tasks. Is this something that you're making space for by doing some load sharing, or is it something that you can are there other things you can do to help with their availability and their capacity? And this really leads on to the right hand side, where we're looking at once we've established the impact of the implementation on the business, it really is critical to understand the resources required throughout that implementation. So resources, obviously include funding, but also from a personnel perspective. For example, will the process be overseen by one person to help with the resource? Is it going to be something that engages different parts of the business, maybe someone from HR, a representative from IT, a representative from management? And what's the ongoing cost going to be from a maintenance of these projects post implementing that change? Other resources include things like facilities. Is it going to be needed, dedicated room, for example, maybe book out a room and dedicate that to implementation processes? Is it going to affect customers and how are they going to be supported? Is it going to affect volunteers and how are they going to be supported? Any additional requirement aside from internet connectivity is going to be required? Does it mean looking at bring your own device policies for the organization to ensure that people can access the systems? And how are you going to deliver training? Is it something that you are going to do face-to-face? Is it a combined approach? And what resources are needed for that? Once you've outlined the business impact and the resource estimates as part of your business case, then you're ready to start to think about how we manage the change that's going to happen within the business itself. So the change management component of implementing new technology is always going to be tricky, and it helps to create a plan which encompasses the 4 steps you see on screen. The first is really critical. Outline the need for change. This is where you should identify and really demonstrate the reasons and advantages for investing in new technology and new softwares, and communicate these to the 3 main stakeholders. Make sure you've got buy-in and understanding from your executives, from your managers, and importantly from your employees and volunteers. This stage is going to include a lot of repetition and really clear articulation of the overarching goal of what we're trying to achieve with the transformation. And to put this into perspective, let's say you're implementing a new HR platform to make HR service delivery a little bit more efficient and effective. For employees, this change is going to result in far better employee experience, a greater sense of empowerment through self-service functionality. For managers, the change is going to result in more informed decision-making, greater oversight of teams, and far less admin. Managers are going to be given extra support, including training and information to enable them to answer employees' questions. And from an executive level, this change is going to result in productivity from the HR team, as well as cost and resource savings. And it also means a deeper data insight into engagement and productivity and all those other critical metrics that executives are wanting to see across the organization. So getting people excited in the change, about the change, it's really important, and reinstating the what's in it for me, the WIIFM, my favorite radio station, element can be done with the assistance of change champions. So finding representatives from different departments who are going to spread the positive message about the change, as well as act as your yardstick, your gauge for employee sentiment around the change itself. Those change champions need to be spread across the business. It's not good enough to say, right, I've got a change champion. You need a few. You need to make sure that you're spreading that out so that you're able to get a gauge from all of the various metrics in the business itself. Pre and post surveys are also going to be really valuable for feedback, as well as one-to-one sessions for those who are resisting the change to really understand the reasoning, and to help educate them through webinars and information packs based on that additional feedback. Now, preparing for the planning, preparing and planning for the change itself. This should involve outlining the impacts of implementing the new system, as we mentioned on the slide previously, but go really granular. It's going to be role changes that are going to occur, clarifications around assigned responsibilities, and ensure that when we support employees through the change, that training should be provided. For end user roles, the delivery of training needs to be considered around a mix of webinars and live demonstrations and on-the-job learning, as well as some assessment at the end to review the training process and ensure that you're doing the most to make sure that individuals are picking up that new skill set. The next step involves creation of a detailed action plan to implement the change itself, including things like timelines for completion, who's leading the implementation, who's responsible for that delivery. And aside from the technical element of change, there's also the human element. So consider workforce training, when it'll need to be scheduled, the impacts of that, how and when we're going to gather feedback, who's going to analyze it, and what the outcomes are going to be, and incentives for change to drive that change itself. And lastly, to sustain the change itself, this last step's about ensuring processes and systems introduced by the new technology continue beyond the delivery of the project itself. Now, this might include, a system of ongoing training, updating changes to processes and procedures. One of the big steps that often get missed is the onboarding of new employees. We implement a new system, but we don't think of the onboarding process that we have new employees come through. They're coming into the new platform every time they join. So considering the ongoing impacts and sustaining rather that change into the business. But this step might also involve documenting KPIs and metrics to measure the effects of the training itself, documenting the learnings from that project, so you can take those those learnings into the next delivery of change that you're going to do in the organization, understanding that every business is going to be a little bit different. So the impacts and the lessons that you learn are going to be really relevant to future projects for the team going forward. And analyzing the project outcomes is really critical. So having a plan in place to do that. As I just mentioned, communication plays a massive role in achieving buy-in from employees and other stakeholders. Human beings, we are complex creatures, and a lot of us don't particularly like change. So that's where regular, transparent, two-way communication is really key to breaking down that barrier. So on screen, you can see 4 branches of communication: awareness, understanding, acceptance, and commitment. Awareness through clear, timely communication will reduce the fear of the unknown and help employees understand the change itself. Understanding is the what, the why, the how, the when, the who, and the what's in it for me of the change, and bolster employee acceptance to reduce the resistance to change itself. Acceptance is that first step to employees' commitment to change. A mindset change here, and employees can feel that they're involved in that process, is really critical. Then employees will commit to the change if they feel involved, and when the benefits for the rewards of making that change are seen, or they know what they are. So a few really good tips here, and in my roles in the past, I've worked in M&A teams where I've helped with change processes of engaging new businesses within the organization. I've rolled out new products internally, so updated pricing structures. I've rolled out new HR engagement processes and platforms and systems, and these are fairly relevant across all of those scenarios, regardless of the type of change you're going through. These tips are going to be relevant. So engaging everyone is really important, but certainly engaging the middle managers, that link between senior leadership and frontline employees is going to be critical to make sure you engage those change efforts. They're the ones that are going to be facing the questions from employees. So making sure they have clarity is really important to the success of your communication strategy. Communicating the success, we've all heard, celebrate the little wins, and it makes a real big difference to a change project. If you're communicating and celebrating the success stories, it reinforces the positive outcomes that you outlined for rolling out the change, and we can rely on other apps and other processes to try and gamify and drive engagement, but really communicating those wins is something that's important. Considering change as a journey, so instead of pushing transformation as a milestone, consider allowing employees to embrace new ways, make room for failure, celebrate the lessons learned, and build that culture where transformation is seen as an ongoing process for growth and progress, rather than we're doing this and this will be completed by here. Celebrate it as a continuous outcome for growth and change. Identify the game changers. So in our current digital and interconnected world, many employees are well informed. They know what matters to them and to the organization. They're highly engaged and can be leveraged to serve as contagion influencers in their peer group. So find those individuals that are going to be really positive momentum builders and engage with them. And this last piece is something that is really important. One size doesn't fit all. Understand employees, engagement drivers, their reasons, their understanding is all going to differ. So try to design and tailor your interventions based on the individual as best you can, or at best throughout the planning, identify where you're going to be able to, pinpoint specific subgroups within the organization that you may need to address. Successful change management is about inciting positive feelings about the change to employees and influence an adoption of a positive behavior. And this isn't straightforward. As I've mentioned, humans are naturally resistant to change. I know I always resist it unless I have a clear understanding of its outcomes. So some people are more resistant to technology than others. And you've probably all seen the graph on screen, the diffusion of innovation theory. It's generally applied to marketing strategies to help understand and promote the adoption of new products. I think Apple are someone who consider this, and I think have spoken to this in the past. It can also be used within change management, and it suggests that people's willingness to adopt innovative technology falls on this bell curve and divided into 5 groups: innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Different organizations are going to have varying percentage in each, depending on the type of people that work in that organization. However, most are going to have a fairly similar bell curve in all categories. Understanding the different perspectives of on innovation, that's the wrong scroll, is going to have an important impact on how we can roll out a smoother implementation. And it is important to cater to the differing degrees of resistance and understand how to introduce and engage with each group on the page here. So innovators are employees who ask for new technology. They're always saying, give us the new tech. They're proposing new ways to do things, giving them access first, giving them access to the technology and engaging them early on. They can learn how to use it. And that's where we find our champions really easily. They're the ones who love the change. You've implemented Google Mail and they've gone straight to Gmail. They're not still using Outlook. They're not wedded to old processes. They're open to change. They're your innovators. Early adopters are the employees who are curious when they see the innovators using new stuff. It sparks their interest. They show enthusiasm, but they're not going to be the first ones to try it. For this group of employees, it might be beneficial in holding focus groups once they've been introduced to the technology and discuss the questions and the challenges they're facing. There's a little bit of resistance there, but not a lot. So the feedback can help you roll out to the rest of the team where you start to see a little bit more resistance. Your early majority are going to be those who are happy to jump on board once they see others are using the tech and see proof that it is working. And your late majority are those similar to the early majority. They want to see proof in the technology, but before they embrace the change, they're going to resist the implementation a little bit earlier on. So keep them in the loop about the progress of adoption, and again, the success stories are really going to be critical for those individuals to hear the ongoing success, and giving them channels for questions and complaints, considering them quite empathetically is going to be really key. And then finally, you've got the laggards. First point of order, don't call them laggards directly. They won't like that. I wouldn't like that. And these are individuals who will resist interacting with new technology unless they're incentivized to do so or repeatedly pushed to do so. It's really important to involve the laggards from the beginning, getting them involved in that entire process and not just leave them to the end. that way you're actually engaging them in, and identifying any issues that are going to come up from those individuals. And if done right, you can actually leverage a laggard, someone who is really resistant to change. If you can bring them on board and get them up and running in the system, or someone who's traditionally a laggard, they can become a champion. And there's no greater champion than someone who resisted it at first but can't live without the change now. So there's a really good opportunity there. Ensure that you're ironing out the kinks before the laggards get introduced to the technology, because any road bumps are just going to reiterate their thoughts and their beliefs in their head that this was never going to work in the first place. And mentally, we don't want them to have that "I told you so" moment. So make sure the kinks are out of the process before you introduce them to it. Now, ultimately, designing your implementation plan to cater for each of these groups is going to reduce the number of conflicts that you face, and the resistance that you'll face as well. Now, to help with road mapping the change program itself, you might use a different change model. If you search for change management in Google, literally thousands of solutions are going to come up with tips and traps and top 10 videos and case studies. All of them are going to come up. Some common change management models include Lewin's change management model, the McKinsey 7S model, Kotter's theory, and the ADKAR that you can see on screen. This isn't exhaustive. There's literally hundreds of different ways to approach it. And the benefit of using one over the other is going to depend on the business's preferences, your individual preferences, and understanding that. Today, we're going to have a quick look at ADKAR, or ADKAR, change management model. It comprised of 5 steps, as you can see: awareness, desire, knowledge, action, and reinforcement. All 5 elements of ADKAR are required to be completed in a defined sequence to ensure successful implementation. You can see on screen what typically has to occur within each of these steps, but really broadly, awareness is about understanding and outlining the need for change. Desire is identifying the factors which motivate individuals to participate in the change, and building and supporting an excitement for the change amongst stakeholders. Knowledge is planning our tasks and responsibility to enable successful change. Understanding that what's in it for me factor is really critical here. Implementation for action, implementation of the change management plan with everyone playing their designated part and ensuring the process supports the change. And then reinforcement, monitoring, supporting, learning from the change process to ensure future success. So what I thought we might do is jump into a bit of a hypothetical example, and we'll have a go at putting ADKAR to practice. So on screen, completely hypothetical. If anyone's working for an organization called Northeast Aged Care, that was a complete fluke, and this isn't based on your organization. But in this hypothetical scenario, they're a 700 employee organization around across Australia and New Zealand. They've got a diverse workforce consisting of all generations, but there's primarily baby boomers in the largest group. Most of these workers are in the front line looking after older citizens, either in their homes directly or in aged care facilities. There's also a smaller contingent of administrative and support staff located across 4 offices, so a fairly big organisation in this case. You can see some challenges they face here on screen, and also the goals of their digital transformation process. They want to digitize processes, increase their usage of digital devices, and enhance collaboration to connect the dispersed workforce. So the overarching plan is to digitize everything in the organization by 2024. And this was to be achieved in 2 key stages. So stage 1 was to introduce digital devices that will help make working lives of employees a lot easier, more efficient, and give them a lot of an increase in productivity. So things like devices being used for time and attendance record keeping, enhanced safety for those working in homes with people they need to care for as well. And stage 2, looking to introduce more advanced technologies once that first rollout is done, not just personal devices, to ensure better outcomes for clients and employees. To do so, looking to boost employee efficiency, removing the need to do as much physical work. So using machinery that'll help lift and move patients, better and increasing that in adoption, as well as requiring fewer staff to do tasks and reducing injuries and workforce practices to be improved. So all of that in the back of our heads, let's think about how ADKAR can relate to this transformation. And let's start with awareness. They've clearly defined the problem, and they've been really specific here about which part of the transformation they're attempting. In this case, rolling out the digital devices is part of a larger project, but segmenting that out and digitizing the company by 2024 has been really clearly defined. There's too many manual processes currently, mistakes are being made, time's being wasted, and safety is in jeopardy. So understanding the options is really key here. Supply standardized devices to all employees, or supply some devices but allow users to bring their own device. Having a clear understanding of what the direction there is important. Building out the business case, so everything we've talked about so far today around understanding the what, the why, and building that business case and communicating it to leaders, and understanding what are the impacts going to be: time, money, resources, and what are the long-term benefits, what are the dangers of doing nothing, of leaving this as it is, and clearly articulating that in the business case. Secondly is desire. So what's in it for me? From an employee's perspective, increasing the ability to work from anywhere and enhancing safety is going to be really critical. So understanding how to articulate that to employees, and from a business perspective, a greater productivity, less workplace injuries, a greater proposition to engage a newer workforce in the future as time goes on. So ticking those boxes is really critical. But also under desire, we have to consider the risks. People not being familiar with the new technology, not understanding the new processes. We need to address those in how we deploy the change. And fears. Employees are going to be resistant, some more so than others, to the change itself. So making sure that training is part of the day-to-day operations and it fits in with their existing schedule and existing calendar. Knowledge. So what training is going to take place? How's it going to be delivered? An initial survey of competency. I remember we worked with a council. This is going back maybe 5 or 6 years, but worked with a council who were looking at rolling out HR technology in their organization. And there was some skepticism from a leadership perspective that their staff weren't going to be able to comprehend using a digital piece of technology, based on a number of factors, that led them to say, look, I don't think the team are going to be able to adopt this broadly. So the HR team ran a survey, ran some feedback, and found that over 90% of their users were using Facebook. And although HR technology is not Facebook, it indicates that their staff are comfortable using digital devices, are comfortable using platforms. Now that was a while ago. It's obviously adoption's far greater of technology these days. But they went out and sort of, rather than making assumptions, they went out and looked at what are our concerns, and let's validate those to see if it's something we need to plan and prepare for, or are we just making an assumption. Knowledge and sharing that knowledge is really critical. So making sure that the learning is tracked and recorded, and that we're looking at how that knowledge is going to be delivered to those who come into the business post the change action is critical. And then action, looking at who's going to collaborate on the project itself. Do we engage IT and HR for the project? Are we going to have different departments involved, different stakeholders? Who are we going to run a trial run with? Are we going to focus on a particular geographic region as a case study? Understand the time it's going to take and really clearly map that out, and ultimately have that goal of digitization by 2024. But what are the milestones that need to happen to get to that point? Having a big, hairy, audacious goal is fantastic, and this is what we want to achieve. But having those steps are really critical. And finally, the reinforcement, the R in ADKAR, identifying the champions throughout the process, and using them to engage the wider workforce. I generally sit on the left-hand side of the bell curve for most things. So I often find myself a champion for change within, the organizations I work for. And as a champion for change, I'm really, happy to do that. If it's something that I can see benefit in and something that's exciting and new, I love sharing that with people. I love, engaging the broader workforce in new technology and adopting that because I can see the benefits as an early adopter. So engage those individuals and reinforce them back into the business, which is going to be really critical. Now, ADCAR or any other process is not going to guarantee success, either in your project or in this, case study that we see on screen. But by planning for success, the changes are going to be, or the chances rather, are going to be much greater that you can achieve it. And your ability to adapt and manage the roadblocks that come up are going to be much greater if you've planned for and prepared for, the what ifs of the project itself. So we're almost at the end, and we'll take some questions before too long, but let's have a quick look at some best practices, best practice change management tips that will hopefully help you bolster your change journey as you're going through it. Firstly, leverage digital channels. Since COVID, we're all avid users of digital communications, either in the workplace or otherwise, things like Slack, Zoom, Teams. If you're rolling out different technology, leverage these digital channels in your change management strategy. Face-to-face isn't always going to work. Leverage hybrid and think remote first when you're delivering these, town halls, training sessions, and engage people with remote first mindset is going to be really critical to how engage those who aren't physically in the room, either because they can't be because of where they're located, or for other reasons. Use strategic communication scheduling. This is really, really important. So have a look at when you're rolling out, say it's a 6 months project, have a look at the times in which you're rolling things out. In a previous role, I've worked where the finance team were keen to roll out a change to one of the systems, but the timing was really poor and it wasn't considered of end of financial year. It impacted the sales team. It impacted a number of different activities that happen within the business. So thinking about when you can schedule these changes and the communication of these changes within the work year, within the upcoming period, is there anything that it's gonna clash with? You might have an annual event that you run, and maybe we wait and kick off the project until after that event so that we have the focus of the business. So considering that is really critical and really important. Having an agile mindset, I'm not going to go into agile methodology, and there's tons of content out there, and happy to talk to it at another stage. But if you're familiar with agile, you'll know that it's about understanding the impacts of change and being able to borrow from that methodology in your change processes, allow you to be proactive instead of reactive is the critical thing there. It's easy to pivot and change course when things change. If you've done your planning, you can use that agile approach to identify where you need to shift and adapt, and you're going to be more prepared for that. But it also calls for things like testing and piloting with small groups of people, which is a really valid way to leverage agile methodology within change management. And regular health checks. I mean, from an HR technology perspective, this is something we're really common and really familiar with. But keeping regular contact with the organization, those getting impacted, it's not a matter of just doing it at the end and seeing how do we do. It's getting feedback from everyone throughout the process and adapting your rollout based on that feedback. Don't get feedback if you're not going to be open to adapting to it, though, because that's something that actually leaves a really bad taste in employees' minds, or in their mouths rather, to say, look, I was asked, what do I think? There's, I can see something that we can change here, but nothing was done about it. So be open to change and communicate the process all the way along. That way you're going to get the most engagement from your employees. So a quick wrap up before we jump into some questions. Feel free to use the the technology there to pop any questions through, and Jean will ask me very shortly. Firstly, COVID-19's accelerated the need for change, especially in relation to technology. So be mindful of the impacts that has on how we adapt to change. Particularly that the burnout is one thing to be mindful of. We've established that change management isn't easy, and there's so many different ways that you can do it, and often they fail. We also talked about how to discover and successfully implement change. Organizations have to be strategic. You have to plan, you have to think forward and understand the impacts to your people. And we also know that organizational-wide communication is going to be critical. That is, if you take nothing else away, communication is really the the make or break trick that will help you with that rollout, regardless of what it is you're rolling out. Whether it's technology, whether it's a system, whether it's new phones, whether it's a new policy that you're rolling out, communicating and having people feel like there's transparency. Not every decision has to be made by the masses, but that perception of transparency is really critical to successful rollout of change projects. And finally, leverage models. You don't have to recreate the wheel. We talked about ADCAR today, but there's lots of other ways to do it. Do a bit of research, do a bit of reading into what things what models are going to fit how you want to roll out your change. So hopefully this has provided you some clarity. It's, as I said, it's not a guarantee. If you follow all of these things, things can still go awry, but you are going to be more prepared for changes and more adaptable if you've done this pre-work, and certainly communication being critical in that successful rollout. So before we jump into questions, if there are anyone looking to digitize their HR needs, highly recommend following the links on screen. Now we've got two separate links here for larger organizations. So anyone who's over 50 employees, the Elmo solution is very much designed for you. Breathe HR is part of the Elmo suite. It's an Elmo brand, and it's much more designed for smaller businesses. So follow the links there. Really help you drive your people, process, and pay. From a small business perspective, certainly where I've worked more recently, looking at a solution that can help you digitize your employee records and give you visibility of that is really fantastic. And those links will take you through to your exclusive discounts as Connecting Up members. So please do explore those. Fantastic. Well, Jean, hopefully you've got some questions there. Happy to take any as we go.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jason. It's very informative. All right. So please feel free to type your questions into the questions box, and we'll get them answered right now. All right. So we got the first questions here. We are the not-for-profit organizations having limited resources. So when you're talking about leverage digital channels, do you have any tips how to educate our employees to do so, especially for some mature employees?
Yeah, I guess it's about understanding what methodology is going to resonate most with your employees. So, as much as it's easy to say, jump on Slack and jump onto a Zoom calls, that's not going to be relevant to your business in that scenario. So think about how are they most, what's their most comfortable communication channel. It might be email, it might be, a town hall, it might be the in-person scenario. So thinking about, to your different groups, your different stakeholder groups that you're rolling out a change to, what's going to be, as much as it's it is good to look at the social aspect of things, and they may fall into that category. Don't narrow it to that. Focus on what is going to be their most effective communication channel. I've seen the rollout of things like Slack in businesses and various levels of adoption. Generally, it's less adopted within executive teams. They're used to sending emails, and so if you're wanting to engage with them, you do that on top. You still maintain the communications pathways, but try and lure them into where the majority sit. So say say the example, you've got Slack or an equivalent platform in for messaging and communication in the business, but you've got this subset of people who are stuck in emails. That's where they live. They're comfortable. Link them back. Still communicate to them in emails, but say, for more information, jump on the Slack channel. Here's a link, and it's not an overnight change, but engaging in where they going to where they live, going to their house rather than expecting them to come to you is going to be the trick to success there.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's very useful tips. All right, I hope that answered our questions. And we got another one. So when you talk about the communication scheduling, do you have any free softwares that you recommend?
From a software perspective, generally with a change process, I don't necessarily think there's a need for a particular piece of software to deliver that. It's about, when I was talking about that scheduling, it's more mapping out what your process looks like. Mapping out what's happening in the business and when are we going to communicate and roll it out. I mean, the easiest one is just to document that in a spreadsheet, or document that in a bit of a timetable. Get a calendar and plot that out. So you've got a clear understanding for everyone of what are the milestones. There are some platforms that provide free versions or sort of free trials that might be relevant. I'm not sure if this is a free one, but I've used Smartsheets before from a project management perspective. You can do what you can do in Smartsheets in Excel or Google Sheets, but Smartsheets is quite a cool I guess solution to the visualization of those pieces. It requires less of a tech background to make it do fancy things. But just having effectively the spreadsheet that we had set up would just have milestones identified, and then flags for when things needed to be done, tracking progress, all of those sorts of things. It can be very simply done, for little or no cost in a spreadsheet.
Lovely. Thank you very much. All right. And we got another one. This is from Simon. What CRM platforms do you recommend for the not-for-profit?
It depends on the size of the organization. I've had more recently, I've used HubSpot, and it's on the lower end of the cost spectrum, so that's always really beneficial in a not-for-profit space. But usability, it's really straightforward. It's really flexible. You don't need a degree like you do with the enterprise solutions to manipulate and to build it up around how you're engaging. There's also functionality in there specific to not-for-profit space, I believe, around identifying different subset groups and volunteers, for example, and it also can tie into your website. It can tie into your marketing strategy as well.
100%. Thank you very much. All right, I guess that's pretty much for the questions. So again, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach us out. You can reach Jason by the email that you are now seeing on the screen. I can copy that as well into the follow-up emails, as well
and feel
as
free to reach out as well on LinkedIn. I haven't got my link there, but just search Jason Portelli on LinkedIn. You'll probably find me. And I'll do a shameless plug again. You mentioned it at the top, Jean, for the podcast as well. So Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, search for People Pod, an Elmo podcast. We talk to different people about engaging people in the workplace. So it's something that I've been part of for a couple of years now, and by all means reach out and chat.
Perfect. That sounds interesting. And maybe Jason, if after the webinar you can flip me the link, and
Absolutely.
I can put into the follow-up email so that people can easily reach out from LinkedIn, and also they might enjoy the podcast as well.
Will do. Thank you.
Fantastic. And again, you'll be getting the recording and also the presentation deck in 1 to 2 business days. All right, so before we finish, I'll just quickly jump to the upcoming webinars. Give me 1 second. Just wanted to show what we are having next. Because we are having a really great web conference very soon on the 25th of August. And since you're already having this webinar with us, you are having a discount code as well. So this is the webinar. So whenever you feel like, go to Connecting Up website. When you go to training sections, there's the upcoming webinars. So we have different kinds of webinars on every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. This webinar I would like to address is the digital marketing webcon for not-for-profit, elevating your web presence and Google grants. So this is with PM Digital. So they will be having 4-star speakers with us, covering 4 different topics. It is a full day from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we'll be talking about how to craft your digital strategy, about the website revamp, Google Analytics, and also the Google Ad Grants. So I'll say it is an all-in-one web conference that it is having lots of useful information takeaway. And again, since you're already supporting us with this webinar, we are very happy to offer you a discount code, $50 off. And the discount code will be sent to you with the same email as well. So if you are interested, feel free to join us next. All right, thank you again, Jason. It's our honor to have you today.
No worries. Thanks, Jean, and thanks everyone for taking the time out to jump in.
Lovely. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Take care.